Hello everybody, I'm joined by Abby Williams today for our How to Get Started with Yammer tutorial. We've recently moved over to Yammer from Teams, but we are still utilising Teams. So Abby, do you just want to talk around why we're doing this and what the reason is behind it?
Yeah, so over the past couple of years, it's always been a question mark around whether Yammer's a viable option, whether Microsoft are investing in it. And we've seen this year that they've given it a full refresh, so it actually looks nice now. And really, with the way that everyone's working at the minute, it's about building communities and those discussions that you'd usually have in the office while you're having lunch or while you're having a cup of tea. For smaller organisations, it might not seem that we need to use Yammer because obviously we've got a smaller number of people, so that's why work at risual was originally put in place in Teams. But we really need to start thinking like a bigger organisation, especially when we're looking at how we can help our clients. And this is really why we wanted to move to Yammer, so that people have a real understanding about when to use Yammer, when to use Teams, what Yammer can be used for, and also how to use it and how to implement it, so that when we go and talk to clients or have discussions about how we use it, we are using it in the best way to be able to demonstrate that to our clients. So they were the main reasons why we wanted to do the separation between Teams and Yammer.
It's probably worth mentioning as well that we used to use Yammer. Well, I say used to, it was kind of in the background, I suppose. And then when we got Teams in place, that kind of took its place, I think. And there was just the odd conversation in the background of Yammer.
Yes, so there were small subsets of people that were still using Yammer, but we went through an exercise obviously to clean it out, to get rid of, I think there was about 89 communities created. So it was just about clearing that out and sort of making a fresh start with when we wanted to relaunch it.
Lovely. So we've relaunched Yammer earlier this week. So we're now going through the process of getting everybody internally started on it, making sure they know how to use it, which channel is best to use for particular types of conversations. Do you just want to explain a little bit between, the types of conversations that Risual should expect to see within Teams and should expect to see within Yammer?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to explain what should be in Teams and what should be in Yammer is really thinking about the audience and who needs to see that information. Now, if it's an internal conversation about a query that you've got with a client or just a general conversation about technology or anything like that, then that can happen in your team. If no one outside of that team needs to know about it or will have any interest in it, then that can happen in Teams. If you think that the information will be useful wider, or it's just a way that you want to share the information or knowledge, then that's where Yammer sits. But also in Yammer, you've got communities around learning that we've created so that you can get resources on any learning for exams. We've got the tech news area, which has been very busy this week because of the Microsoft announcements. And then we've got social well-being and obviously your all company. And then there's also the different initiatives going on. So like diversity and inclusion, we have an internal team to do the working area of it, but we've also got the Yammer group to be able to communicate wider. So it's about having your working group in Teams and also the mechanism to communicate wider through Yammer.
Lovely. Do you want to just show us then, how people in Visual can get started, but also this primarily probably would apply for people externally as well?
Yeah. So probably the first thing to go through is how to access Yammer. So one of the easiest ways, obviously, we're always working in Teams at the minute, so we can now actually pin to Teams on your taskbar. So obviously I've already got it here, but if you just search communities, you'll be able to see it there and you'll be able to pin, and that will then make it appear in the left hand side, and that way then you can get directly
to prevent from clicking from screen to screen.
Yeah,
you don't have to have your internet tab open, or you don't have to always have Yammer open on the internet somewhere. It's all in one place now for all conversations. So any form of communications, although they're two separate things, it's still in one place, which I think is something that people maybe don't like the idea of it being in separate places. And that obviously overcomes that challenge, which is good.
Yeah, and you get a really helpful home feed, so stuff that you might not have seen will pop up from the numerous communities going on. And this might be some communities that you're not specifically joined to, but the intelligence in the background thinks that it would be useful for you to see. Okay, so then if I go through and look in Yammer in the web. So if I just do yammer.com, that should automatically route us through to risual. So as you can see, very similar to what you see in Teams with regards to the layout. And then you've got all your communities down the left-hand side as you would before, and you can click through into the various communities. So they're the two main ways to be able to get into Yammer. There's also a really good Yammer mobile app, which I've got installed, and that's really helpful to keep up to date and just have a scroll through as well. And with any of this, you can choose how you get notified. So if you go into your settings and go into edit settings, you can go across to notifications and you can pick. You can go in and ask it to email me when, and then you can pick the activities. You can pick which communities you want to be notified about. So that's really good for if you wanted to manage the notifications. Obviously, if there's something going on and you haven't been into Yammer for a bit, you will get an email just to say this conversation's happening, and you can actually reply and like within Outlook, which I think is quite a cool new feature.
I think it's worth mentioning here as well, the communities on the left-hand side. If it's your first time, getting started with Yammer, you'll only see the communities that you're actually in. So obviously you've got quite not a long list, but you're obviously in more at the moment. Whereas if somebody's just going into it for the first time, they may only be in, 3 or 4.
Yeah, well, just a starting point was you'll always see all company. So that is the main one that you'll see, because that's done through Active Directory. So as people join and leave, that will appear in here. So if we go to, so say you were just starting with just an all company, you can actually go through and discover communities. So if I flick over to all communities, you'll be able to see there all of the communities that are currently in Yammer. And then you can go through and select to join it, or you can go and have a nose first. So if we go, this is difficult because I've got quite a lot that I've joined. Should have joined. Yeah, so if I go and have a look in here, this is something of interest, you can just select join there, and then that will appear in here on the left hand side. And then if you want to obviously pin or favorite, so like you would with your teams in Microsoft Teams, you can pin, so you can just put hearts against them, and that will put them towards the top, and then that'll work out the preference with notifications as well. But obviously, as you, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I was going to say, primarily, how many communities do you think, larger organisations would normally have? I know you mentioned at the start we had, when we first did Yammer, I think, was it 89 you cleared out or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that a normal amount, do you think, or?
I think it can get into its hundreds, because if you think of the different initiatives that people might have, so you've got like cycle to work schemes, you've got book clubs, we've seen things like fantasy football be a community. It's just dependent on the common interests that people have in the organisation. So it will really depend on the engagement and obviously what people want to talk about.
Cool.
Okay. And if you find when you're on Yammer there's something missing, or you want to set up a community because of your common interest, then you've obviously got the create a community area. So you can go in here and create your group, give it a name, you can add your members, and you can choose whether it's public or private. Now, for me, I think Yammer should be very much public because you've got your private teams within teams. So that's where I think the separation is, that really the majority of it should be public access because we're meant to be sharing to the wider audience.
Yeah, so like when you mentioned it at the start of the call on in Microsoft Teams, we've got a diversity and inclusion group, which just has kind of at the moment, it's the working group. You know, we talk about what kind of next actions are, what we need to start working through. Oh. And then on Yammer, we've obviously got a wider group which anybody in the organisation can see and get involved with. They can see all the content that we have produced. They can see all the stuff, all the initiatives that we are doing, and they can get involved in any way that they possibly want to.
Yeah, so I'd really deter people away from doing private groups in Yammer because, as I said, you've got that ability in Teams, and that's really your separation. Yeah, so once you've filled all this out, you can click create, and then you can go and customize. As you will have seen, people have done the banners and the images. So if I go on to wellbeing, you can go through and update the cover photo. You can go and update the icon as well. You can go in if you're an admin. You can go in and play with all the settings as well. And if you're wanting to import a larger group, you can actually add from a CSV. So we've done that with the wellbeing because we want everyone to be involved in that. So that's just a CSV format file, and you upload it and it automatically puts all the email addresses in. So that's really useful. And then when you're having the conversations, you've got a lot of options. So when you go on here, you can obviously go wider. You can change it to a question. You can change it to praise. So you can pick what icons you want to use. You can pick who you want to praise. So that's really good. If someone's gone above and beyond and you want to have that reward and recognition in place with organisations. And you've also got the opportunity to do polls. So we've seen one in the tech community where they want to do a monthly tech forum, and it's just asking what times people prefer to have that forum. So it's really, really easy to use. And then you've also got, you can attach files, which then will appear in the files icon. And really, that's as simple as that. You can just go through and post. And then you've obviously got your like, your comment. We're promoting using hashtags just because then when people are searching, things will come through based on hashtags as well.
The one thing that I like about the stuff you just mentioned is the praise button. Yeah. So obviously at the end of every week for however many years it's been now, we've got the internal newsletter in progress, but you kind of have to almost wait until the end of the week to see if you've had any praise or to see, you know, somebody get the praise that you've given to somebody else. And although that's a great way of doing it, I think this is nice because it's almost like constant updates. So if they were to submit it ready for in progress on the Friday, they can always pop it in here as well, just so that the person they're saying thanks to, they don't have to wait until the end of the week to get it. It's just, I don't know, it makes it a bit more, it's quick communications, and it's something that the people can just quickly do it in 5 minutes, if that, really, which is nice.
Yeah, and if you think at the minute everyone's working remotely, you would usually just go and walk up to that person and say thanks for that.
Yeah.
Whereas you haven't got that ability at the minute, so it's really being able to still do that, but in a digital way, and for other people to see. So it encourages that positive mentality of people thanking each other for stuff that people have done for them.
Yeah, it's fab. It's really good. And all of these functions and the way it works and everything you just ran through, although you're doing it on the web at the moment, it's the exact same in the pin channel on Teams. Yeah,
so I can go in and do it exactly from the same place in here as well.
Fab.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, well, we'll finish it up there then. I think that was quite a good run through on just how to get started, and you can start posting into Yammer immediately now. You know how to use it. You know the importance of it and the difference between the channels that you'll probably see in Yammer in comparison to what you'll see and how you'll use it in Teams. So I think that was a really good run through. So we'll call it off there, but watch this space. I'm sure there'll be many more coming up soon.